Once, Quasasat had ruled a land of rivers and lovely valleys, its forests verdant, its plains abundant with crops, but that had been before the casting of certain incautious spells in a war with threatening Melniboné more than 2,000 years earlier. Quasasat's empire had been lost to both sides. It had been engulfed by a vast mass of sand which swept over it like a tide, leaving only the capital and her traditions, which, in time, became the prime reason for her continuing existence. Because Quasasat had always stood there, she must be sustained, her citizens believed, at any cost, throughout eternity. Though she had no purpose or function, still her masters felt a heavy obligation to continue her existence, by whichever means they found expedient. 14 times had armies attempted to cross the sighing desert to loot fabulous Quasasat. 14 times had the desert itself defeated them. Welcome, friends, to Breakfast in the Ruins, a Michael Moorcock flavoured podcast. If you tuned into our end-of-year musings a couple of shows back, you'll have heard Loz and myself talk about what we were likely to cover next. As it happens, we surprised ourselves and decided to plough straight back into Elric, just not with the book that we'd had our eyes on. No, instead, we thought it high time we covered something that, back in our salad days, we found slightly more challenging than our usual Moorcock fare. After spending the 80s reading all the Elric back catalogue, as well as various other Eternal Champion entries, we each experienced a similar surge of excitement with the release of an all-new Elric novel, one that, much like Revenge of the Rose before it, slotted neatly, or not so neatly depending on which editions of other books in the series you had to hand, into the Elric sequence between Elric of Melniboné and Sailor on the Seas of Fate. Sequentially then, this is a kind of, sort of, direct follow-up to Elric of Melniboné, so it makes some kind of sense that we would pick up the Doomed Emperor's trail with The Fortress of the Pearl. Also, this show sees the return, after quite some hiatus, of the Journal of Gerard Connelly. Wayne, aka Nan Soundtracks, has been beavering away, and we've been messaging back and forth to steadily build the quality of what originally started back in mid-2020 as a fairly lo-fi attempt to put my scribblings in an audio format with some cannibalised bits of music to add a bit of atmos. As regular listeners will know, Volume 2 of the journal, i.e. Chapter 8 onwards, had a marked improvement in quality thanks to Wayne's mastering and his scores, and Chapter 11 will debut at the close of this show. Chapters 12 and 13 are close to completion already, and they'll follow in the coming weeks, and that will conclude the audio version of Volume 2. But that's just our side gig. This is, after all, a Moorcock flavoured podcast, and today Elric is our subject of choice. So, join Loz and I in Derry and Tom's as we indulge in some truly brutal tinctures, and some rather nice ones, and catch up with Elric during his gap year in The Fortress of the Pearl, Book 1. Well, we're only back in Derry and Tom's. Back in Derry and Tom's with Loz. Hello, Loz.
Hello.
Hello. We've just had some rather delicious Caribbean food.
We have.
We're already 3 or 4 random pale ales or IPAs.
But nice ones.
Nice ones.
Yeah.
And we've also had some kind of Cloudwater, cherry, tonka and chuckleberry sour share beer.
Yeah.
Which was slightly more hard work.
I think it was a slightly sour beverage for me. It was a Gaviscon chaser on that one, I think.
Yeah. Did you have your Gaviscon chaser?
No, I didn't bother.
Fortunately, I take lansoprazole, so I'm already...
The gift that keeps giving.
I'm already inured to these things. What are we here to do today, Loz?
We're discussing Fortress of the Pearl.
We are discussing Fortress of the Pearl. And interestingly, notwithstanding the fact that we actually kicked off this podcast 2.5 years ago with The Dreaming City, the last book we did, Elric was Elric of Melniboné.
It was indeed.
So actually, doing Fortress of the Pearl means that we're simply carrying on in narrative order.
Yeah.
But
just by chance.
Just by chance.
Then good judgment, I think.
Yeah, and weirdly, Fortress of the Pearl was written in 1989, which is...
I've got the 1990 version.
Yeah, which is like 28 years after The Dreaming City, and approximately 16 or 17 years after Elric of Melniboné. Sure, that was written in 72.
Yeah, that's about right, I think.
Yeah.
It's weird because on my version, which I was discussing earlier, it says the first new Elric book for over a decade.
Because I honestly can't remember exactly how the Panther editions went, Panther/Grantham editions went in the 1970s when they were all collected together. But a lot of them were merged, reordered. So what would the last Elric novel he would have written be before that in 1979? I don't actually know. Maybe we've got our times all mixed up. But anyway, it's written a long time after Elric of Melniboné.
In the 80s, so 80s Elric, if you will.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So the version I'm reading from actually is the Glanks edition from a few years ago, and this one is the copyright 2013 revised version.
Ooh, interesting.
So you're reading the original version, I'm reading the revised version.
Mine's the Grafton one. A division of HarperCollins for all those people who are remotely interested.
And it's got that fantastic cover.
It is a brilliant cover.
The city Quasasat. Quasasat. We'll get to that in due time. So, yeah, very excited for this one because I haven't actually read it since the early 90s.
No, neither have I.
So that's quite groovy.
For various reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was just about to say, fair disclaimer, fair warning.
Yeah.
I didn't like this book.
Neither did I.
At the time.
No.
So revisiting it has been a really cool experience, although we probably should say, because we're extraordinarily slow at reading and talking about these things, and it's very, very handily split into books 1, 2, and 3, much like some of his 70s content, that just allows us this evening to talk about book 1.
Book 1, 5 chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it clean.
5 fairly lengthy chapters, though.
Yeah, they are a lot longer than usual, aren't they? Because normally it'd just be Elric has a cup of tea, wears a kilt, kills a few people.
Drinks some breakfast wine.
Yeah, moves on.
Yeah. So there's a little bit more going on in these 5 chapters than you would normally get in one of his 60s or 70s kind of health leather, forward driving, propulsive.
I think it's a massive paradigm shift, this one, because it kind of I kind of have the Elric books split into kind of 3 kind of buckets. You've got the original ones, which are really pulpy and really short stories but punchy, and then we had the middle section, which I think was Fortress of the Pearl and Revenge of the Rose.
Yes,
Revenge of the Rose I really love, and then you have the new.
The Moonbeam Roads trilogy.
Yeah, which, we'll touch on at some point. But I think this is the first time for me that Elric was kind of rounded a bit more. He was rounded in Elric of Melniboné, but I think he definitely rounds him a bit more in this.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about how Elric's portrayed in this that we'll get into, but also the way that it's portrayed and how it fits with the narrative if you were to come to these books cold and read Elric of Melniboné and then go straight into Fortress of the Pearl, rather than the way we did it back in the day, which was probably fairly patchwork in terms of the older books, but then pick up Fortress of the Pearl after we've read the bulk of the original Elric.
I mean, I think if you've read Stormbringer and then go back, it's a bit of a... It adds a bit of poignancy there to some of the writing, I think. Yeah,
it absolutely does. And we know that Moorcock over the years has revised certain parts of these novels. We talked on the last show with Dave about the revisions to the Dreaming City, about Elric's garb, which was terribly disappointing to me.
Yeah, exactly.
But also the revisions that have taken place that I've checked out fairly quickly from reading the new Saga Press editions is that at the beginning of Sailor on the Seas of Fate, I think originally there was a reference to him having left Rakir and Co. at the end of Elric of Melniboné a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it never quite sat right that Fortress of the Pearl took place in the gap between the end of Elric of Melniboné and the beginning of Sailor on the Seas of Fate. But that's actually been revised now to say that he's been out in the world a much longer period of time. Right, okay. Sadly, because Moorcock is in his 80s now, and we know he's got a citadel of forgotten myths, whatever it's called, I can't remember, coming up later in the year.
Yeah.
Had he had enough appetite in him to write a lot more Elric stories, what he's done there with extending that timeline, and actually it would fit with some of the ways Elric talks and some of the portrayal of Elric in terms of his world weariness in this book, he could have probably fitted in another half dozen novels in that gap between Elric and
Where's that one set then?
The new, I don't know, but it fits. I think from memory, it fits between volumes 1 and 2 of the Saga editions. So it's still knocking about the Moongloom.
Right, okay.
So I think it's pre-Bane of the Black Sword and Stormbringer. It's post Vanishing Tower. I got those the wrong way around. So it sits pretty much slap in the middle of that 70s Panther range, stroke Grafton range of Elric stories. Yeah, so he's with Moongloom.
Right,
still.
Okay. Yeah.
Quite excited for that. A Moorcock novel, which is a pure pulp Moorcock novel, and not one of the Moonbeam Road trilogy. We'll get to these eventually, probably in 35 years at our current pace.
Yeah. And by that time, we've forgotten who Moorcock is. So we'll just be like, just repeating the same thing, but recording it, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, a really, really fascinating look at a book which, historically, for both of us, we weren't particularly fond of.
No.
So very interested in rereading it and revisiting it now with all the years that have gone by. And I think in my case, probably, I hate to admit how old I am, but it might be 30 years since I've read this.
Yeah, so if mine's 1990 and I would have nerdily bought it then, I am 100 years old, so that is, 30 years.
Yeah, a practicality we need to get out of the way is our past few shows. We've done the Wandering Hideous Beers table.
We have, yeah.
But on this occasion, we've decided to mix it up a little bit, and we're going to do beer matching. Yeah, so we're going to match a bit. We've read the first 5 chapters, which comprise book 1. We've matched a beer to each chapter. We still have some pale ale in our glasses, which we have to sling down our gizzards before we get into it. So, chapter 1, which frankly is mostly Elric lounging around like a sweaty fop.
Yeah.
We have chosen Dynamo Merlot barrel-aged Imperial Stout with dates and vanilla. And this costs £10.95 for this small bottle, and it's 11% by volume.
But I think the dates fit quite nicely with Quasar.
Yes. It's a good job we filled up on that Caribbean food before we kicked off. Otherwise, we might have been in bother.
Yeah, so it might be
apologies. It's got a bit of a head on it.
Short podcast where we all just eat hot scratching.
Well, we will definitely eat hot scratchings at some point as well. So, first of all, the aroma, the nose. It smells like all of these fucking Imperial Stouts and Porters.
I think I think that they're always a cross between chocolate and Bovril. I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a touch of Bovril. There's definitely a touch of dog food tin.
Jardox.
Jardox. I wish you could still get Jardox.
Yeah, I do, just because I've never tried it.
Yeah. I suppose for the sake of the listeners, when I worked in a psychiatric hospital in the early 90s and I used to work nights, I used to live on toast and Jardox because the hospital kitchen on our ward had certain things which were kind of standard stock for every ward, which was almost out-of-date sun-blessed white bread.
Brilliant.
Axle grease style margarine in massive 1 kilogram tubs.
Mm-hmm.
Custard creams, bourbon biscuits, and Jardox. Oh, and tea and coffee, of course.
Yeah.
But Jardox was like a strange Bovril substitute. And of course, Jardox is a play on words. And I think I'd stopped working. It was 10 years since I'd worked at the hospital before the penny dropped on what that actually meant. But it was like a weird, runny Bovril substitute that worked great as a Bovril drink, but also was fucking fantastic on toast. So yeah, I lived on it. And I ideally wish I could still get Jardox.
So we've got the Bovril Jardox paradigm.
The Bovril Jardox dog food can paradigm.
Dog food, yeah. I'm getting dog food.
Right. Cheers. Let's get into this. Not as horrific as I expected, but it might be hard work to drive it down.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's a syrupy quality.
Yeah, it is slightly syrupy. Anyway, so to take my mind off that, I'm going to read the opening.
I wonder if it's the same opening.
Yeah. I'm going to read the extract from the Chronicle of the Black Sword first, and you can read along and see if there's anything different.
Yep.
And when Elric had told his 3 lies to Cimmeril, his betrothed, and had set his ambitious cousin Yerkun as regent to the ruby throne of Melniboné, and when he had taken leave of Rikir the Red Archer, he set off into lands unknown to seek knowledge which he believed would help him rule Melniboné as she had never been ruled before. But Elric had not reckoned with a destiny already determining that he should learn and experience certain things which would have a profound effect on him. Even before he encountered the blind captain and the ship which sailed the seas of fate, he was to find his life, his soul, and all his idealism in jeopardy. In Ufik Sormir, he was delayed over a matter involving a misunderstanding between 4 unworldly wizards, who amiably and inadvertently threatened the destruction of the young kingdoms before they had served the balance's ultimate purpose. And in Filkar, he experienced an affair of the heart which he would never again speak about. He was learning at some cost the power and pain of bearing the black sword. But it was in the desert city of Quajasart that he began the adventure which was to help set the course of his weird for years to come.
That's exactly the same. Well, what I was saying was the in Ufrik Sormir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to read that.
Yeah, I do.
That would be cool.
That sounds quite exciting.
And the Filkar love experience.
Yeah, a couple of nice little scenario seeds there.
Yeah, definitely. But before we start obviously reading it, I do think rereading this, it does remind me very much of a role-playing scenario.
Yes.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And we will come on to that, I think, because it is... I think when I read it, it was similar, but rereading it, it's like almost... Holy crap, you could make that into a game straight away.
Yeah, it would be a very railroady game.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But all of Moorcock's stories, particularly the ones that are about quests, which most of them effectively are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long for this one to get into quest mode.
No. Yeah.
Have happenings, the odd random encounter with a beastie, which we get.
Yeah.
And the odd Deus Ex Machina to get him out of trouble.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, because there's something of a mystery set up when he gets the quest, which we'll get to.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah.
But actually, he has no agency in how he gets to the specific stages of that. They just happen to him.
Yeah. I mean, he could do. Well, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get to part 1, and then obviously we get to my thing I hate most about fantasy books.
Yeah.
We get a poem.
Oh.
Which I will read.
Read the poem.
Is there a madman with a brain to turn the stuff of nightmares sane, and demons crush and chaos tame? Who'll leave this... Sorry, I'm deliberately doing it like that.
It's all in the delivery.
Yeah. So I'll start again. Now what? Is there a madman with a brain to turn the stuff of nightmares sane, and demons crush and chaos tame? Who'll leave his realm, forsake his bride, and tossed by contradictory tides, give up his pride for pain? Now, for me, I'm not an expert poet.
No.
I've written lyrics in the past.
Uh-huh.
I've done a bit of English lit in my years. It's a bit literal, isn't it?
Yeah.
From a poem. And the Chronicle of the Black Sword sounds a bit of a shit book, I think.
Yeah.
You've got the lovely bit before, which is still part of the Chronicle of the Black Sword. Mm-hmm. So you've got that bit you just read, which is quite a nice bit of prose.
Yep.
And then Ayup, who's writing the poetry for it?
Yeah.
Have they got Dave in to do it? Who is it?
Well, I think it is. It's very much trope in fantasy, but I also think it's quite a Moorcockian trope as well. Which is why, if you recall, when we played Dirk's Heartmoon game,
yes,
I made my character the Banneret of Tanalorn a really bad poet.
Yeah, which
and I even came up with shit poems, and I don't think I got my due credit for actually putting that much of effort.
Because I think you were just like, overshadowed by my portrayal of the character.
Yeah.
Who just wore a lot of hats.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. Ideally, they should be combined. Yeah, it's quite hard work, isn't it? Let's get chapter 1 out of the way so we can potentially get to something better.
Oh, God, it's horrible.
Okay. So chapter 1, A Doomed Lord Dying.
Which I think is really lovely written.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lot of exposition in there around Quashazat, which is how I'm going to pronounce it now. After a few more of these, it might be more might be Sean Connelly doing it.
Yeah.
But some lovely prose, really good description, and gives us a bit more background on a bit of the Cyan Desert and the Young Kingdoms that we... The Cyan Desert is just like a really good name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Moorcock said in the past, didn't he? Think of 2 words, join them together, to make something really evocative, and that was part of his not how to write, but what was it called? But it was a good point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He used it quite a lot in this.
Yeah,
I think so. The Sighing Desert's got a bit more mythology around it, a bit more depth, which is good.
There's some really cool kind of world building, particularly in chapter 2, which makes it feel really vibrant and alive.
Yeah,
we'll get to that. But so it kicks off. It was in lonely Quasjasart, destination of many caravans but terminus of few, that Elric, hereditary emperor of Melniboné, last of a bloodline more than 10,000 years old, sometime conjurer of terrible resource, lay ready for death. The drugs and herbs which usually sustained him had been used in the final days of his long journey across the southern edge of the Sighing Desert, and he had been able to acquire no replacements for them in this fortress city, which was more famous for its treasure than for its sufficiency of life. The albino prince stretched slowly and feebly, his bone-coloured fingers to the light, and brought to vividness the bloody jewel in the Ring of Kings, the last traditional symbol of his ancient responsibilities. Then he let the hand fall. It was as if he had briefly hoped the Arctorius would help revive him, but the stone was useless while he lacked energy to command its powers. Besides, he had no great desire to summon demons here. His own folly had brought him to Quasjasart. He owed her citizens no vengeance. They, indeed, had cause to hate him, had they but known his origins.
It was a good setup.
Yeah. So it's in Quasjasart.
I'm going by because I've been listening to the audiobook as well. He just says Quasjasart, I think.
Well, that's cheating, mate. That's cheating if you've got an audiobook to refer to.
Well, exactly. That's why I can pronounce some of the names.
No.
I thought it was Eric for ages. It was disappointing.
Well, we know it's really Eric of Marylebone, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's in Quasjasart. How did you say it?
Quasjasart.
He's in Quasjasart. Okay. He's down on his luck.
I think yours is probably better, but we'll go, whatever.
Yeah. He's down on his luck. He's got no dosh. He's out of herbs. He can't even afford water.
Yeah.
And a young lad, who found him in the desert, he's looking after him in the hope he can get something out of the situation.
I think it's looking after him in inverted commas, isn't it?
Yeah. Thinks there's something in it for him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's very much drawn to the sword Stormbringer as something that can be sold for influence and power.
What I love about it, this whole chapter, I mean, it does give a lot of world building in the first kind of 2 or 3 pages, but Elric comes across as quite an interesting character, because he's there, he's got this little lad who's kind of looking after him, and this guy has been brought up in this strange culture where they've got a certain view of history, haven't they? Mm-hmm. And he's just quite wry, isn't he? And Elric, in other kind of stories, especially in the earlier ones, possibly have lopped his head off, sucked his soul out, and then gone for a ride on a horse for a bit. He's quite moral in this, isn't he? I think.
I think that's a reflection of the fact that he's quite early in his career.
Yeah.
Inverted commas.
Well, he's not the White Wolf, is he?
He's not the White Wolf. But there's a flip side to it, in that although this is quite early in the Elric timeline, Moorcock feels like he's leaning quite hard into the doomed relationship between Elric and Stormbringer, which really develops as the saga goes on, and isn't really that well developed this early in the story. Certainly not in Sailor on the Seas of Fate.
No, but they're talking about, there's a piece where they talk about Stormbringer, what he's basically analysed saying, can I sell your sword in the market?
That's right,
which is a really good piece, I think.
Yes, it's really cool. So the boy gasped and drew back, almost as if regretting his suggested bargain, and says, is it alive? And it says, Elric contemplated his sword with a mixture of loathing and something akin to sensuality. Some would say it possessed both a mind and a will, others would claim it to be a demon in disguise. Some believe it composed of the vestigial souls of all damned mortals trapped within us once, in legend, a great dragon, was said to dwell inside another pommel than that which the sword now bears. And of course, that's a reference to the dragon in the sword.
Yeah.
To his own faint dismay, he found he was taking a certain pleasure in the boy's growing dismay. Have you never looked upon an artifact of chaos before, Master and I? Or one who is wedded to such a thing, its slave perhaps? He let his long white hand descend into the dirty water and raised it to wet his lips. His red eyes flickered like dying embers. During my travels, I have heard this blade described as Ariok's own battle blade, able to slice down the walls between the very realms. Others, as they die upon it, believe it to be a living creature. There is a theory that it is but one member of an ancient race, living in our dimension, but capable, should it desire, of summoning 1,000,000 brothers. And that's a bit of foreshadowing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you hear it speaking, Master and I? Will that voice delight and charm the casual buyers in your market? and a sound came from the pale lips that was not a laugh, yet contained a desolate kind of humour.
Yeah, which is cool. I think the other bit as well is Anai kind of gives a bit of background to Quasazat, doesn't he? Where he's saying this is like that story on it's Massa Boone's walls, whatever that is. And he's saying this is what those who brought about our isolation were said to wield. The leaders bore identical swords to these, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Now he's talking about Stormbringer's at least 10,000 years old and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then the bit I thought was quite interesting was it says that Elric regretted frightening the boy. I'm not deposed, young and I, to maintain my own life at the expense of others who have offered me no harm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's slightly different when he's older.
Yeah.
And he says, I would not kill you. And then the young lad says, oh, master, thou art dangerous. And it's in like an incredibly old language, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is even older than Melnibian. No.
Melnibian, yeah.
Melnibian. Yeah. And he's talking about it's only used by the thieves' cant in Quasazat, and it's older than both. What's the language called? It's called Opish, isn't it? Yeah. But it's just I think you had to like loads more kind of background and world building. This chapter, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and there's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot more dialogue in this, and particularly actually each chapter there's stacks of really fantastic dialogue where the world is established by characters talking to each other,
as opposed to Basil exposition. Or just...
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I really, really like the way he builds environment and sense of scene in his earlier books, but this feels a lot richer.
Yeah, there's a lot more depth to it, isn't there? I think before, I think you said the same thing. You could sum it up in a couple of sentences. Yeah. It'd be like, the city of screaming statues or whatever.
Yes.
And that would be it. And you go, that sounds nice. And
it's a very cool description.
Yeah, you'd probably build yourself around it.
Yeah. And I think whilst it's a really great way of developing his writing, developing his character. It's obviously 20 years later. He's already been writing things like Byzantium Endures by this point. He's written Gloriana. He's a much more sophisticated writer. I think he's written Mother London by this point.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So he's returning to a character after quite a long period of time. But I do think if you were to read this immediately after the end of Elric of Melniboné, where he's happily in the pub having a drink with Rakir and going, ha 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 ha, it's going to be brilliant, my gap year. And then straight away you're into,
because ultimately it is Elric's gap year, isn't it? So it shows like what a naive buffoon he is for a start. So he's basically going, we've discussed this at the other book. Yeah, what I'm going to do, it's going to be ace. Yeah. So Cimmeril, I'm just bogging off for a bit. Yep. You just hang out with your cousin who actually fancies you, which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
And then the guy who tried to throw me off the throne, I'll put you on the throne, and I'll come back with loads of, groovy knowledge after my gap year, hang out with people, come back with some great ideas.
Yeah, Yaku might be a massive tit, but I'm going to put him on the throne because, you're a woman. I can't put you on the throne. But don't worry, I'll be back in a year after having a really groovy time. Just open a cereal cafe in Philipcar for a while.
Just keep pretty. I might go surfing. Yeah, I'll come back probably with some magic mung beans or something. And maybe a sitar. Yeah. And then we'll just hang out. It'll be groovy.
But oh no. Yeah. We get straight into it, and he's close to death.
He is close to death.
Musing on a terrible situation.
Bad logistics.
Yeah, and also, of course, we learn that the history between Quasazat and Melniboné is that they had an enormous war sometime in the past.
Yeah.
Quasazat cast some kind of crazy spell which turned everything to desert.
But that's what's great about it. Yeah. What I love about it is, as you said, there's that war. Quasazat, it basically describes it as one sorcerer, I can't remember his name, probably Derek or something, cast a bad rune. Yeah. You don't want to do that, do you? You're in the middle of the war.
You fucked up, Derek.
You cry. It's the equivalent of wearing the wrong hat at the party. Yeah. So he did the bad rune, and instead of, because I think they were trying to basically provide some protection around the city, weren't they? And he fucked up and turned everything to desert. Yeah. So that's what Elric believes. Yeah. So that's their kind of historical paradigm in Melniboné. And then you've got the Quasazat, which was like, it was the Melnibonians who did it.
Yeah.
It was their fault.
Yeah, but we defeated them 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, I love that. It's just the fact that it reminds me of certain aspects of Imperial Britain where you're just going,
absolutely,
hooray!
Yeah, where it's like, whose narrative?
Yes,
are you going
to believe? And it's that redacted history thing.
Yeah,
1984. Let's rewrite history.
Yeah,
but I really like the fact that you've got two opposing cultures, but they're both written their own history. And but we're on the side of Elric, so he's the main character.
That's right.
But who's to say he might be wrong?
Yeah,
but he's not.
Anyway, Elric, close to death.
Yeah.
He's been musing lengthily on the situation. He's hanging out with an eye. An eye can't get him the herbs to help, but some mysterious bloke turns up and feeds him some restorative elixir.
But before that, I think you've got Master Anai. Basically, after Elric's crapping on about Stormbringer, he goes, "Oh, you're a dream thief," and Elric goes, "Yes, I am well a dream thief. Yes, I am.
I am entirely a dream thief."
Yes. Didn't I not mention that before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hops on his phone and Googles dream thief. Yeah.
Sadly, he can't get a reception in Quaz, so he's like, "Oh shit, I'm just going to have to blag it."
Yeah.
We've all done it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a dream thief. So then after that, Anne, who is a bit of a chancer, because he wants to rise up in his culture, he wants to get on, doesn't he? Yeah, he's a good little capitalist. He's there. He goes, "All right, your dream thief, nice one." I know, just the man. And that's where we move on to chapter 2.
Yeah, well, there's some geezer turns up at the end, doesn't he, and gives it some restorative elixir. But of course, there's an angle.
A richly clad man.
Yes.
He has a bit of a dream there as well, doesn't he?
That's right, yeah. So this guy turns up giving the elixir, and he claims to be Elric of Nadsokor.
Yes. So he's pretending to be, one of the beggar thieves.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that I think Moorcock was trying to set up, and I think what Moorcock meant to say in that chapter, he was trying to build the relationship with Cimmeril a bit more, because it's a bit one-dimensional, the relationship. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Cimmeril, she's well fit. Oh, you're brilliant.
Yeah, we rode horses together.
We had horses. We made gentle love in the grass, probably. Yeah. Sand.
Pro-recited bad poems.
Yeah, I would have thought. Yeah. Just that kind of, when you get a really bad kind of sequence in a film where you've got to condense a relationship to about 10 seconds of film, and it's just people laughing over prawns or something.
Yeah. Laughing over the open-throated choir. Hitting a bum note.
Yeah. People being tortured, that kind of stuff. Traditional Melnibonian fare. Yeah. So I think he's trying to build, because he's talking about Cimmeril quite a lot in this, and he's like, the one reason I don't want to die is when I go back and see Cimmeril, it'll be ace. Yeah. She's the love of my life. Apart from that mysterious woman mentioned in the Chronicles, the Backsword piece in the prologue. We don't know who it is.
No.
If it's a she or a he. Who knows?
Do we also find out in chapter 1 that little bit about the Council of Six and one other?
That's in the first kind of few pages, isn't it? So it talks about Quaz and how the politics is set up. And basically it's quite disparaging about them. Yeah. But it's supposed to be the most beautiful city, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's totally subtle, and I think there's one bit in it where it was talking about there was the fountains, which it costs more to have the fountains running. So no, that was it. They could use that water to actually grow crops, but instead they use it as fountains and canals to make the city look beautiful. Yeah. So basically, it's that aesthetics over substance, isn't it?
Yeah. It says in better health, Elric would have relished the city's monumental beauty. It was a beauty derived from an aesthetic refined over centuries, and bearing no signs of outside influence. Though so many of the carving ziggurats and palaces were of gigantic proportions, there was nothing vulgar or ugly about them. They had an airy quality, a peculiar lightness of style which made them seem, in their terracotta reds and glittering silver granite, their whitewashed stucco, their rich blues and greens, as if they had been magicked out of the very air. Their luscious gardens filled marvellously complex terraces, their fountains and watercourses drawn from deep sunk wells, gave tranquil sound and wonderful perfume to our old cobbled ways and tree-lined avenues. Yet all this water, which might have been diverted to growing crops, was used to maintain the appearance of Quasart, as she had been at the height of her imperial power, and was more valuable than jewels, its use rationed, and it's theft punishable by the severest of laws.
Yeah, and there was the other bit about, because that's really some ace well building as well, but also he was talking about so Elric's own lodgings were in no way magnificent, consisting as they did of a truckle bed, straw-strewn flagstones, a high single window, plain earthenware jug, etc., and a basin containing a little brackish water, which cost him his last emerald.
Yeah.
So it shows how kind of expensive water is. And they're saying water permits were not available to foreigners, and the only water on general sale was Quasar's single most expensive commodity. So it's talking about this, like, you know, water. It's a bit like June, isn't it? You've got water being the most precious thing, but then they decide to just use it to have fountains and canals and stuff.
Yeah.
Which kind of sums up the vacuousness of Quasar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit like Arakeen, isn't it?
Yeah. Arakeen, but even more stupid.
Yeah.
A stupid version of Arakeen.
Yeah. And it's ruled by this council of 6 and one other.
It's the Council of 7, isn't it? But they're called the Council of 6 and one other.
Yeah.
Not even just one other.
Yeah.
So basically, you just said Quasar.
They're just greasy politicians.
Yeah, it just said the whole culture is basically trying to do one-upmanship on other people, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's in the first or second page, which was quite. It just reminded me currently of possibly our country.
Yeah.
There you go. But, you know, bit of politics.
They are just greasy politicians jockeying for position. And we find that in a little bit in chapter 3 once the quest is underway, which is quite hilarious.
It is. Yeah. So basically, the quick version it was. Meanwhile, the city's chief obsessions, some may say her chief industry, were the elaborate intrigues amongst our rulers. A republic, albeit in name only, and the hub of a vast inland empire entirely covered by sand. Quasar was ruled by a council of 7, whimsically called the 6 and one other.
Yeah.
And my favourite bit is a vast inland empire entirely covered by sand, which, if we know, having read Moorcock and read interviews with Moorcock, that's got to be a thinly veiled synopsis of England, you would have thought, and the British Empire. Not even it's not a subtle metaphor, is it? But it is.
No, and I think in the future when we get to book 2 and maybe 3, there are even less subtle allegories from that perspective. But we get into chapter 2 anyway, and we meet the person who sent him the elixir, who wants to commission him as a dream thief.
Indeed.
To do a job for him.
Yeah.
And that's Lord Go. Yeah. So in honour of Lord Go, we have chosen our beer match for the chapter with Lord Go is Vault City, Blackberry, Blueberry, Blackcurrant, Choc Chip, Cookie Dough, Modern Sour at 8%.
Could you actually lob any more things into that?
I'm not sure. Let's find out. Maybe we could stick some fried plantain in it.
Yeah, or beef. But I wouldn't expect it to look like that.
If you've got some beef stock kicking around, we could drop it in there.
I've got some Bovril, probably.
All right.
Cheers.
Yep. It smells as typically.
I'm going to try and be slightly more sophisticated than usual.
What if this smells of something specific? Some kind of cleaning product? Possibly. I don't know. Maybe not.
One of those things we plug into the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, a blackcurrant one.
I think it smells sort of like some...
I don't know what it smells. It smells... I can smell the blueberry, to be honest.
Yeah, it smells like blueberry windscreen wash.
Yeah.
That's actually really, really nice. It's tart.
Yeah, it's good.
But I like it.
Yeah, it's good.
I like that a lot. Well done, Lord Go. So why did we pick this outrageous hipster sour beer?
Lord Go Farsi.
Yeah.
To give him his full title.
Lord Go Farsi. Lord Go is actually a massive hipster tool.
The description of him is quite magnificent.
Yes.
Are you going for it?
You go for it.
Lord Go Farsi was modishly coiffed and clad. His black hair and beard were teased into symmetrical ringlets. The long mustachios were waxed and pointed, the heavy brows bleached blonde above pale eyes, and a skin artificially whitened until it resembled Elric's own. The lips were painted a vivid red. He sat at the far end of the table, which slanted down subtly towards his guest. his back to the light, so that he almost resembled a magistrate sitting in judgment on a felon. So let's go back to the description. So we're talking Robert Smith with a beard.
Yeah.
But, with combed hair.
Yeah.
So basically, bleached skin, red lips, massive mustachios.
Yeah.
He's got bleach blonde eyebrows,
Yeah.
which is quite impressive. And just by that sentence of the slanted down table, suggests he might be a bit of a tool.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll leave it. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, and he says, Elric recognised the deliberateness of the arrangement and was not put out by it.
Because
Elric's
he's like...
too cool to
He's an emperor, isn't he? He's not going to put up with that nonsense.
But it says, Lord Gower was still relatively young, in his early 30s, and had a pleasant, slightly high-pitched voice. He waved plump fingers at the plates of figs and dates in mint leaves, of honeyed locusts which lay between them, pushed the silver flask of elixir in Elric's direction with an awkward display of hospitality, his movements revealing that he had performed tasks he would usually have reserved for his servants. So there's often a trope in things, isn't there? Like sort of the perfumed, slightly effeminate, overweight, the foppish.
Do you see him as overweight in that?
It's the plump fingers.
Yeah,
thing, isn't it?
That didn't kind of cut it with me. When I was in my head, he was more of a probably thin, slimmer guy.
Yeah.
But then you read the plump fingers, possibly with massive hands. I don't know, but
it drives you towards that there's an old trope in fiction where you get, if this had been adapted, there's a strong likelihood it would have been a slightly chubby guy with the red lips, the chubby fingers.
Yeah, the Baron Harkonnen.
Yes,
who's the guy of Game of Thrones? The eunuch character.
Yes, Varys. So
yeah.
he's sinister because he's effeminate, slightly overweight,
but very immaculately dressed.
Yeah, so it is
a bit crap actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And whilst I like the idea of Lord Gower as a villain because he is a massive twat,
he is.
There's something a little bit, and I know there's been a lot of time gone by, but I think this is quite an old, tired trope.
No, definitely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, he's wearing makeup.
Yeah.
The other thing which we'll touch on possibly later is the kind of the cultural thing as well. So you've got almost Elric, the white saviour thing going on, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah. I think you're right. It's almost a bit of a let's have the villain as a greasy foreigner kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. It's like a combination of he's like a Nero-esque greasy foreigner. Maybe we're overthinking it, overreading.
Maybe we're just being woke.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, god damn it, choke the woke. Is that even a thing? I don't know. Woke the chicken.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I don't know either.
But he is a good villain. He is a good villain. But he is a bit Baron Harkonnen.
The thing for me about the villains in Stormbringer, in the Elric saga compared to, for example, the Corrum saga. Yeah. If you think about the major villains in the Elric books, so you've got, let's just say Lord Gower's one of them. Yeah. He's not really, but he's in one book.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got him. You've got Theleb Kana, who was a bit rubbish, wasn't he? He was a bit of a...
It was a bit 2D.
Yeah, he was a 2D, bit of a crap sorcerer who really fancied Yashana.
Yeah. And
that was the whole reason he decided to destroy a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was a powerful nerd who couldn't get a girlfriend.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wasn't he?
Yeah. So there was him, and then there was not the Emperor Pang Tang, what was he called?
The Theocrat.
Theocrat, yeah. Can't remember his name.
Moustache twirling villain, for the most part.
Yeah. Johnny Foreigner.
Yeah.
No, and the one thing about the Elric stuff was the villains were always quite mediocre in a lot of ways. Obviously, you had Ariok and you had all the other people, but...
Well, we see later on with some of the subsequent chapters that the cast of characters in this is very diverse. They're Middle Eastern.
Totally, yeah.
We have our first black almost companion.
Almost. And he was a good character.
Great character. But the one who wears makeup and is slightly fat. And anyway, you know what? We've probably dwelled on that a little bit. But one thing that really leaps out at me, when I was reading it, I thought, has this ever struck me in any other Elric books when I've read? is the practical issues of Elric wandering around with Stormbringer at his hip. Right? Whenever you hear the descriptions, it talks about the great sword Stormbringer. When I see the imagery of paintings, he's always holding it. It's always fucking enormous.
It's a big sword, isn't it?
But there are references in this to where he has his hand on the pommel or hilt when he's talking to Lord Go every time he wants to kind of be passive-aggressive.
Yeah.
There's a bit where Stormbringer murmurs against his hip. It conjures this image, which I found quite amusing, of Elric walking into this grand hall with marble floors. And as he walks in nonchalantly, Stormbringer's just dragging behind, sparkling and scraping the marble floor. Or and the next thing, he walked into a pub with Stormbringer scraping the wooden floor behind him, and the waiter trips over it, throwing beer everywhere.
Yeah, but he has I think, in that kind of chapter, Stormbringer's just like props up against his chair, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, how big is this fucking sword?
Yeah.
And why does nobody go, well, first of all, your Lord Go, right?
Yeah.
You presume he might have read a bit of history. He's gone to school. He's going, this guy with like slightly Melderbonian features. He's got like a massive black sword that keeps like kind of murmuring. It kind of rings a bell. What? Hang on. I mean, the little lad worked it out quite quickly, didn't he? But didn't want to. It's almost that thing of delusion, isn't it? Self-delusion of like, no, that doesn't happen. I'll put my hands over my ears. It'll be brilliant. And it's that kind of thing. But this dude's supposed to be in charge, and he's going, pointed ears, slanted eyes, Melderbonian looking, got a black sword, seems to be murmuring quite a bit.
But it's fat, effeminate and lazy. So he probably hasn't read his textbooks. He probably never listened to his history teachers.
Exactly.
He's looking at Elric and just from a position of absolute arrogance and supremacy.
Yeah, there is that.
So I can kind of accept Lord Go being an insufferably arrogant prick.
Oh, totally, yeah. I mean, the whole Quasat people, the guys in charge, are all arrogant buffoons, aren't they? But I think we've missed one really important point. Honeyed locusts. Don't know about you. Not massively keen on that. As a
Generally
delicacy.
speaking, I would always say that I'd try out once.
Yeah.
But, not necessarily into the idea of eating insects. And I know they're supposed to be a really good source of protein, and some scientists have said they're the food of the future. I'm not quite there yet.
No, you'd have to probably batter it, because we're from Hull.
Yes.
So,
Oh, fuck it, stick it in batter. And pop them on a stick with a pop curry sauce.
Bob's your onion.
Okay, I'll give that a go.
Yeah. Honeyed locust, anyone? I'll have 4.
Yeah, why not?
Got a few ales.
Yeah.
Great. Anyway, we don't go.
The other thing we learn while we're not musing on whether Stormbringer is just unfeasibly and practically large to wear on a belt.
Do you think it's a two-handed job?
Well, I think the indication is it's a great sword, isn't it? It's a huge sword, but I don't know. Maybe it changes in size according to the requirements of the appropriate scene.
That would be handy, wouldn't it?
It would be handy.
Yeah.
It would be handy.
A cinematic
Maybe
sword.
it's not a great sword. Maybe it's just a really great sword.
How great is it? It's very great. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, we find out that the elixir has been fed as well. Lord Go's quite happy to tell him that actually, you're now addicted, and if you don't take it, you'll die.
Oh, he's fallen for the oldest trick in the book. So anybody who's ever written a rubbish story or a rubbish kind of role-playing game, what do you need to do? Oh, I've got no player agency.
Yeah. What's my motivation?
What is
You'll die if you don't do it.
Yeah, what is my motivation? Oh, you've been poisoned by the dude with the fat fingers.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that one coming. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
There I was, thinking I was all right. I was on top of the game.
Yeah.
Thinking I was a dream thief, selling that. But no.
Yeah.
The elixir. The thing about listening to the audiobook, which, as I said, was cheating, but I read it as well, so it's not cheating, was the number of times somebody said the word elixir really pissed me off.
Yeah.
I was always willing a different word.
Yeah.
Lovely drink. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Draft of syrup.
Yeah. It's a delicious craft beer.
A delicious shot of chartreuse.
Yeah, whatever. But it was just But it's the oldest trick in the book, isn't it? Going, he's bullshitting him, isn't he?
Yeah.
Talking about stuff. Have another one.
Yeah.
Have another one. Yeah, we've all fallen for it.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you've been poisoned and you need some kind of antidote.
That's right. And we have all been there.
We have,
and
yeah.
You've fallen for it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Lost Dad Cruz loss?
Yeah.
Oh,
never again.
On,
never again. Oh, no. Yeah. Is this really absent?
Yeah. He's also using Young and I as a bargaining chip.
Yeah, which I think is
well,
isn't
it? Threatening the child. This is Elric could not help considering the irony of this, for Melniboneans thought themselves equally above such loyalties, and he was one of the few who cared what happened to those not of his own immediate family. It was the reason he was here now. Fate, he reflected, was teaching him some strange lessons. He sighed. He hoped they did not kill him. If the boy is harmed when I return, Lord Go, if he is harmed in any way, then he will suffer a fate 1,000 times worse than any you bestow on him, or, I'll add, on me. He turned blazing red eyes upon the aristocrat. It seemed that the fires of hell raged inside that skull. Lord Go shuddered, then smiled to hide his fear. No, no, no. His unnatural brow clouded. Unnatural brow? What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
It is not for you to threaten me. I have explained the terms. I am unused to this, Sir Thief, I warn you. Elric laughed, and the fire in his eyes did not fade. I will make you used to everything you have accustomed others to, Lord Go. Whatever happens, do you follow me? This boy will not be harmed. I have told you, and I have warned you. Elric's lids fell over terrible eyes, as if he closed a door in a realm of chaos. Yet still Lord Go took a step backwards. Elric's voice was a cold whisper. By all the power I command, I will be revenged upon you. Nothing will stop that vengeance. Not all your wealth, not death itself. This time when Lord Go made to smile, he failed. An eye grinned suddenly, like the happy child he had been before these events. Evidently, he believed Elric's words. The albino prince moved like a hungry tiger towards Lord Go. Then he staggered a little and drew a sharp breath. Clearly the elixir was losing his strength. It was like, I'm up for...
the malady, pass me the chair.
Yeah, so he has a little fail there. But yeah, so the scene is set.
It is, but I think there's some really cool stuff in there. I think you've got the Quaz has that kind of culture again of the arrogance of it and the sheer self-delusion of what's happened. But you also got the fact that Anai knows like a really old language again. Yeah. And he's like, meanwhile, do not trust this filthy creature and make every sensible effort to escape on your own. And no gutter patois here, cried Lord Go, suddenly alarmed. Yeah. Or you both die at once. You can imagine this in a film. So you've got this guy who's super arrogant, bit of a knobhead, and he's just going, best not to threaten me, Lord Go. Elric returned his hand to the hilt of his sword. And the nobleman laughed. What, such belligerence? Understand you not, Sir Thief, that the elixir you drink is already killing you. So that's when he finds out it's poison. Yeah. But up until that point, we've read other stories. We know Elric with Stormbringer can basically wipe out a lot of people. You've got the Revenge of the Rose, the beginning bit of that. It's all in kind of present tense, isn't it? And he's just wiped out like thousands and thousands of people with Stormbringer.
But that's more a feature of the later ones, isn't it? Because in the 70s books, in the stories, in the Panther editions, whilst he's got Stormbringer, a fight with half a dozen warriors can still be challenging. And
yeah.
Whereas we're at a point with this, it's like, if we've got Stormbringer, and we find out in chapter 3, if we've got Stormbringer, it's like, fuck this, I'm just going to kill a billion people. Yeah. And you get that in Revenge of the Rose as well. So it's like, the perception of his power level
is massively higher, isn't it? Yeah. But I think the weird thing about Elric in this, so basically, he's down on his onions, and he's not doing great. He's had a bit of elixir, but even before that, he's had some food, feeling a bit better. Stormbringer's there, he's got some nice clobber on, which is generally Elric feels a lot better, doesn't he, in some nice clobber.
Yes.
But still, if you look at the power levels, because Dylan, my son, he reads a lot of manga and he reads some of the Korean kind of stuff, and he's always talking about power levels, and he's going, the power level of this character is crazy, and he kind of, that's how he judges certain stories, because if it's overpowered, it's like, this character's overpowered. And you think about Elric, he is massively overpowered. So basically, this guy can contact and summon Ariok by killing somebody. So he could kill Lord Go. He's got Stormbringer. He could kill the kid. He could summon an elemental or something like that, but he just chooses not to, doesn't he? Because you don't want to go down that path of being that person.
Yeah. We also find, don't we, that Lord Go's plan is that he wants the grand MacGuffin in the story, which is the pearl at the heart of the world.
Yeah, indeed. So it's just a big pearl.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And it's nicely outlined what his mission is at the start of Chapter 3, On the Red Road. Now, for Chapter 3, On the Red Road, our beer match is Start Again Imperial Orange Sour, a 10% alcohol sour at £6.60 a can. God, we are proper hipsters.
We are, Lord Go.
So, seeing as we were on a sour last time, it shouldn't be quite as jarring.
That was nice, that last one.
I enjoyed that last one.
Yeah, it was good.
It maybe got a little bit too sweet as we got down there.
Yeah.
But
I was reaching for the Gaviscon chasers on that one. But
some very, very nice flavours. And I was starting to regret not bringing backup lansoprazole, but we're not sure we'll manage. Actually, I think Phil did pack me some pills for tomorrow, so I might just have my other lansoprazole tonight instead.
Yeah, bonus.
Right.
I'll be tucking into the Gaviscon.
Here we go. Start Again Orange Sour. This will be the strongest sour I've ever tried, I think. I'd like to say it smells orange.
It smells nice, actually.
That doesn't smell. That's the nicest smelling.
Yeah, that smells of
this evening.
It's a nice kind of orangey smell.
And for a 10% of that actually tastes really good. But if we allow this to get anywhere near room temperature, it'll taste like special brew with a twist of orange.
It's nice though.
It is nice.
That's a good kind of drink outside in the sun drink.
It is. And if you heavily refrigerated, it would be rocket fuel because you drink it very quickly.
You'd have to drink it in shot glasses, otherwise you'd be utterly shit-faced.
That is potentially danger beer.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, Chapter 3, On the Red Road. So it was that next morning, Elric of Melniboné left ancient Quasisart, not knowing what he saw or where to find it, knowing only that he must take the Red Road to the Silver Flower Oasis, and there find the bronze tent, where he would learn how he might continue on the path to the pearl at the heart of the world. And if he failed in this numinous quest, his own life at very least would be forfeit. Lord Go-Farsi had offered no further illumination, and it was evident the ambitious politician knew no more than he had repeated. The blood moon must make fire of the bronze tent before the pathway to the pearl shall be revealed.
Yeah, and that
bit vague.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of somebody going, "Yeah, can you get me the this magic pearl? Yeah, where is it? No idea."
Yeah,
and that's when it goes back to reminds me back of the gaming scenario thing of it's like, what's my motivation here?
Yeah, I'm going to use it. Follow the green brick road.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Find the orange Mazda. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. It will drive you to the magenta ashtray.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Off you go. What do you need? 50 feet of rope.
But
10-foot pole with a mirror on the end.
Verily forsooth, where is the red hat of Pat Ferrick?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, the moment he gets out of town, the red road's right in front of him.
Yeah. But he does
pretty much one big arrow.
He does check the map.
He does.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. It's quite handy having a map, although none of those things are on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I've got to say, though, I absolutely fucking love this chapter.
I really don't.
Really?
No.
Oh, no.
I really the first two chapters are really like...
Yeah.
I thought they're really well written. This chapter just is like... Right. The first... In my head, it's like... And Michael Moorcock's a great writer. I'm not. But in my head, it's like... how do I introduce a bit of excitement? Right, okay, I'll get some very strange running rat dude, fire beetle business. And that for me is like, it's almost like, this story's getting a bit boring, isn't it? What do? I need to lob loads of shit into it. It'd be great.
No, I really like it because, number one, it makes the Sighing Desert feel like a real place. And it's got like a life cycle.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Okay, it's rats with lanky legs getting chased by fire beetles. Fine. But I really like it. And let me read these two chapters.
Yeah, you go for it. Chapters?
Yeah, sorry, not chapters. Yeah. Got the beer all night.
Steady on.
Yeah. The Red Road was well named, dark as half-dried blood, cutting through the desert between high banks which suggested it had once been the river on whose sides Quasisart had originally been built. Every few miles the banks descended to reveal the great desert in all directions, a sea of rolling dunes which stirred in a breeze whose voice was faint here but still resembled the sighing of some imprisoned lover. The film climbed slowly into a glaring indigo sky, as still as an actor's backdrop, and Elric was grateful for the local costume provided him by Raphael's Keem before he left. A white cowl, loose white jerkin and breeches, white linen shoes to the knee, and a visor which protected his eyes. His horse, a bulky, graceful beast capable of great speed and endurance, was similarly clothed in linen to protect it from both the sun and the sand which blew in constant gentle drifts across the landscape. Clearly some effort was made to keep the red road free of the drift which gathered against its banks and gradually built them into walls.
I was going to stop you there before, but I liked it. Don't you? The first paragraph, amazing. So you've got this like amazing road. You've got the view, the vista of like the desert.
Yep.
And then you got a paragraph of trousers. So I'm just gonna no.
Yeah, but I love one of the things I really love about Moorcock is his love of breeches.
Yeah, that was my question, right? Yeah. So breeches. Talk me through it. What are breeches?
Breeches are the like breeks. I don't know.
What are breeks?
Breeks are a type of pant that gather at the knee.
No, so you're talking your Air Force breeks.
I think you're thinking more of jodhpurs.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So yeah, for me, there's a lot of breeches, a lot of breeks. What are we talking here?
I don't know. I think maybe I'm just betraying my love for different names for trousers.
Well, yeah, but for me, it's like, well, what's Elric wearing? You know, how can I visualise this? What's he talking about?
Well, I think breeches maybe are similar to breeks.
Well, I would imagine.
We'll have to Google breeches.
I would imagine flares. If you're talking desert trousers.
Look, he never said loons, did he?
But I think he should. I think Elric was out there.
Right, hang on. Let's just reread this for a second. Elric was grateful for the local costume provided by Raphael's King before he left: a white cowl, loose white jerkin, and loon pants.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just say white jerkin and wafters.
Yeah, exactly. But then you've got white linen shoes to the knee. Yeah. What's that all about?
I don't know. It's like Dunlop Green Flash, but bigger.
Yeah. But up to the knee.
Yeah.
They're big green flash. Yeah. And then you got a visor. We're talking golfing visor.
But I explained that breeches are a trouser to the knee. So I'm technically wearing breeches right now. Yeah. I'm going to refer to these as breeches from now on.
What about your breeks?
I don't have any breeks because I don't have any trousers that are gathered at the knee.
Well, t-shirt, pedal pushers.
So hang on, let's read this. A white cowl, loose white jerkin, and wafters with white and green Dunlop Green Flash.
Yeah, exactly.
Happy now?
Yeah, I think I am. Yeah. Apart from the visor. Is it a golfing visor?
Well, I don't know, it could be. But it's something to protect his eyes against the sun. Yeah. And I quite like it.
And his horse is wearing breeks as well.
Because what it isn't is a skimpy goth vest and underpants.
Yeah.
Like on half of the covers.
Yeah, you don't want that, do you?
Yeah. And actually, there's a really nice Robert Gould picture in the Saga edition, which I think comes from one of the American collected volumes, where Robert Gould has actually illustrated Elric wearing this desert gear. It's a fucking fantastic look. I really dig it.
But the thing is, if you're an albino, or in my case, somebody who burns quite easily in the sun, despite previously having black hair, not now, you won't want to go out in pants and a vest, would you? It'd be a disaster. You'd just be like, you'd be chapped before you went out. You'd be burnt, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, in that case, I think that we should actually, make this a real serious point, that if any Elric artists are listening to this, stop drawing him in underpants because it's just not practical.
Yeah, it's stupid. Yeah. No emperor's going to go out there in his pants and a breastplate. It's stupid, isn't it?
Personally, if I was an emperor, I would go out just in pants.
Well, so would I. So would I.
Even though I am a pasty twat who burns easily.
Yeah.
You know what? I would have all the money in the world for back to 500 something.
Yeah, I'd probably have some decent factor 50 stuff. But I'm not an albino, so How big is the visor? What are we talking?
I actually don't know.
I don't know, neither do I.
Maybe by visor just means a sweet peaked cap.
Yeah,
something.
Baseball cap,
maybe.
Green flash, pair of wafters.
Yeah.
Bob's your undies.
Either way, I dig it. But he does get caught up in that cycle of life of long-legged, lanky rats being chased by fire beetles.
Yeah, I'm not having that.
Yeah, but I dig it. But he gets rescued by Manag Is of the Yellow Sect of Sorcerer Adventurers.
Yeah, Sorcerer Adventurers sound a bit shit, don't they?
I don't know. I might actually start referring to myself as a Sorcerer Adventurer.
Yeah, which is fine.
Because there's no evidence that they're really sorcerers or adventurers.
But they just wear yellow, don't they?
They just wear yellow. Yeah. And we found out that Isenko are enemies of Lord Go and a rival sect allied to another counsellor.
Who's the other counsellor?
Lady Is.
Yeah, Lady Is. Yeah. What's she all about?
And there's a very nice description. And again, I like Moorcock's descriptions of clothes. So this chapter is Man from Heaven.
Mostly about clothes.
Because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. The rider was taller than Elric, very thin, with a gaunt, dark face and black eyes. His head was shaved and both his lips were decorated apparently with tiny tattoos, as if he wore a mask of fine, multicoloured lace across his mouth. Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, that's good.
The spear was not sheathed, and Elric prepared to defend himself, knowing that his chances against even so many human beings were greater than they had been against the fire beetles. Yeah, because he didn't do very well against the fire beetles.
He's a bit rubbish, right?
He was a bit rubbish, yeah.
I think he was distracted by the very long-legged rats.
Yeah.
As we would all.
And Managis is not a particularly humorous person, and they're saying...
He's a humorless knobhead, isn't he, really?
Yeah, Managis left an expression of mild impatience across his strange face. It is known that your patron, Lord Gofarthy, has promised the Pearl of the Heart of the World to the nameless Seventh, and she, in turn, has promised him the new place on the council in return. We have discovered enough to know that only an exceptional thief could have been commissioned to this task, and Nadsokor is famous for exceptional thieves. It is a task which, I am sure you know, all sorcerer adventurers have failed in completing. For centuries, members of every sect have tried to find the Pearl at the Heart of the World whenever the blood moon rises. Those few who have ever survived to return to Quasar were raving mad and died soon after. Only recently have we received some little knowledge and evidence that the Pearl does actually exist. We know, therefore, that you are a dream thief, although you disguise your profession by not carrying your hooked staff. For we do know that only a dream thief of the greatest skill could reach the Pearl and bring it back. So they still think he's a dream thief, but they're allied to another counsellor. They're not into the idea of him finding this, so they're trying to convince him not to do it. There's another amusing reference where they say that they all marry in family. So they're also kind of brother and sister and cousin marrying inbred sorts in Quasar. So Eric's a little bit dubious, and Is even offers to rescue an eye or even assassinate Lord Go. But Elric's just not. He's not
into it, is he?
No, because he just doesn't trust him, which is fair enough.
What if Lord Go were assassinated?
Yeah.
Elric shrugged. I'm grateful for your intervention, man, I guess. I will consider your offer as I ride. You appreciate our little time to find the Fortress of the Pearl.
But before they can actually get any further into it, well, what happens? The foxglove turn up.
Oh, God, them guys.
And this feels like you're watching the wrestling and people keep turning up on the ramp and interfering. Yeah. So the foxglove sect music plays. And they turn up.
Which is like probably Benny Hill.
Yeah. And they're led by Oled Ailsham.
Of course they are.
Who's slightly more fun than Managis. And they say, oh no, actually, we're here to protect the Dream Thief.
Yeah.
We want the Dream Thief to succeed. So therefore, we will accompany him. And Elric's kind of getting a little bit cheesed off with this.
Possibly claustrophobic.
Yeah, very possible. Yeah. Well, it gets even more claustrophobic when the Brotherhood of the Moth turn up.
Oh, I know.
All in black. So Ailsham and Is are competing for Elric's attention, and the Brotherhood of the Moth turn up. And they're assassins, and they just want to do Elric in. So Elric's like, well, will you protect me? And they say, no, we can't protect you, because we're not able to actually fight each other, because we're all basically related.
Yeah.
But what we could do is we could form a circle around you, so they can't attack us to get to you. Yeah. At which point Elric's just like, you know what, fuck this, and charges the Brotherhood of the Moth and butchers them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's, you get to a stage where Moorcock's probably going, and then these guys arrive, and then oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But, oh, no, there's too many guys now. This is ridiculous. What should we do?
Yeah. Oled Ailsham said, you'll be butchered. These are skilled killers. Oh, so am I, Master Sorcerer Adventurer. So am I. And with that, Elric drove his horse forward through the startled ranks of Yellow and Foxglove sects directly at the leader of the Moth Brotherhood. The ruined sword began to howl in unison with its master, and the white face glowed with the energy of the damned, while the red eyes blazed and the sorcerer adventurers realised for the first time that an extraordinary creature had come amongst them, and they had underestimated him. Stormbringer rose in Elric's gloved hand, its black metal catching the rays of the glaring sun and seeming to absorb them. The black blade fell, almost as if by accident, and split the skull of the Moth Brotherhood's leader, clove him to his breastbone, and howled as it sucked the man's soul from him in the very split second of his dying. Elric turned in his saddle, the sword swinging to bury its edge in the side of the assassin riding upon his left. The man shrieked, "It has me! Oh no!"
That's the worst kind of like epitaph ever, isn't it? Yeah, it's like, oh. It's equivalent of like, oh no, it's rubbish. Oh, dead now. Oh, my soul.
Yeah, rubbish. But that's quite common in Moorcock, isn't it? It's like, no, my soul.
Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? Any kind of like dying sentences in any fantasy books are generally a bit of shit, aren't they?
Yeah. Now the other veiled riders were warier, circling the Albina at some distance while they determined their strategy. They had thought they would need none, that all they must do was ride a young kingdom thief down and destroy him. There were 5 of the Black Riders left. They were calling on their fellow guild members for aid, but neither Managis nor Roled Elsham was ready to give orders to his own people which could result in the unholy death they had already witnessed. Elric showed no such prudence. He rode directly at the next assassin, who parried with great cleverness and even struck under Elric's guard for a second, before his arm was severed and he fell back in his saddle, blood gouting from the stump. Another graceful movement, half Elric's, half his sword's, and that man too had his soul drawn from him. Now the others fell back amongst the yellow and green robes of their brothers. There was panic in their eyes. They recognised sorcery, even if there was something more powerful than they had ever anticipated. So essentially they all crap the pants and think we don't want any part of this.
Yeah, maybe an error.
No, we're not doing this.
Elsham scowled a little. I'm beginning to guess a little of your origins, Sir Thief. 'Tis said that the lords of the Bright Empire carried such blades as yours once, in a time before this time, in a time before history. 'Tis said those blades are living things, a race allied to your own. You have the luck of our long-lost enemies. Does this mean that Melniboné did not drown?
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave that for you to think on, Master Roled Elsham.
Yep, so the Brother of the Moth, the Yellow sect of the Sorcerer Adventurers,
and the other dudes,
and the Foxglove sect all think discretion is the better part of valor, and they all piss off and leave him to it. So Elric rides off, pretty pleased with himself. And it says he rides off whistling, hopped up on the souls of the Black Moth Brotherhood.
Yeah.
He rides away whistling.
Yeah. He's having a right laugh.
Yeah. So night falls, he gets some kip, and he has a dream, and he gets a nice. We get a kind of a nice sort of recap or summation of where Elric is at this position, not in this book, but kind of in his timeline. His dreams were formal and familiar. He was in Imria, the dreaming city, and Cimmeril sat beside him as he lay back upon the ruby throne contemplating his court. Yet this was not the court which the emperors of Melniboné had kept for the thousands of years of their rule. This was a court to which had come men and women of all nations, from each of the young kingdoms, from Elwë and the unmapped east, from Foom, from Quasisat even. Here, information and philosophies were exchanged, together with all manner of goods. This was a court whose energies were not devoted to maintaining itself unchanged for eternity, but to every kind of new idea and lively, humane discussion, which welcomed fresh thought not as a threat to its existence, but as a very necessity to its continued well-being, whose wealth was devoted to experiment in the arts and sciences, to supporting those who were needy, to aiding thinkers and scholars. The bright empire's brightness would come no longer from the glow of putrefaction, but from the light of reason and goodwill. This was Elric's dream, more coherent now than it had ever been. This was his dream, and it was why he travelled the world, why he refused the power which was his, why he risked his life, his mind, his love, and everything else he valued, for he believed that there was no life worth living that was not risked in pursuit of knowledge and justice. And this was why his fellow countrymen feared him. Justice was not obtained, he believed, by administration, but by experience. One must know what it was to suffer humiliation and powerlessness, at least to some degree, before one could entirely appreciate its effect. One must give up power if one was to achieve true justice. This was not the logic of empire, but it was the logic of one who truly loved the world and desired to see an age dawn when all people would be free to pursue their ambitions in dignity and self-respect. That's quite nice. That gives you kind of an idea that even though we've had these passages where Elric is kind of world-weary and, quite self-pitying to some degree when he's laid in his cot, this is like the idealistic Elric. This is Elric who wants a new world.
It's when he's not an anti-hero, though, isn't it? It's kind of... Because I think with the initial Elric books, he was very much an anti-hero, and it was almost like, well, he's very evil. Yeah. And he's not, is he? He never was anyway, but I think he's trying to put him in that... Yeah, it's a very idealistic view, isn't it? But basically, he wants to rule... He wants to rule the world, basically, because it's an empire based on grooviness and possibly loon pants. And
I think he definitely wants to create
it's that 60s thing, isn't it?
Where people can come from all parts of the globe and contribute culture and beauty and goodness and art.
And science,
Science, and it's still quite arrogant and conceited, but at least it's noble and well-intentioned.
Oh, of course it is. It's what everybody kind of would dream of, wouldn't they, really? Yeah. If you're in charge, you want to make it as great as possible.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, the irony, obviously, is, we've all read the books, and sadly that don't happen.
Yeah, it don't quite happen for him, does it? Bless him. But it's all interrupted anyway, because he rolls on the Wandering Monster table.
He does,
and a cat scorpion demon thing.
Oh, yeah, that was it.
Turns up. And he goes back
what's that called?
I think it's the cat scorpion demon thing. I can't remember if it's got a real name. Has it got a name?
No, I think you're probably right. Yeah. The beast screamed.
Yeah.
And I do think some of it's really reductive. I think it almost spoils some of the stories. So you've had like the comedy Rats on Legs, Fire Beast, millions of assassins piece. Do you really need like another fight with a random monster?
Well, it's just a device, isn't it? It does two things. One is it gives us an opportunity for what the fuck's his name?
Albert Craig, is it?
Alnak Craig.
Alnak Craig, yeah.
So he could just wake up the next morning and go, "Oh, hello, Alnak Craig."
Yeah.
Or we could have a moment of
breakfast
fantasy novel fight action.
Yeah.
Where, with the assistance of this mysterious adventurer who comes across, helps him defeat the demon, and he thrusts the sword into the demon. We get a little bit more information that actually absorbing the soul of a demon is really dangerous. Yeah. Even though it's kind of cast off pretty quickly. Yeah. He's like, oh no, this is bad. Forces Stormbringer into the sheath so he doesn't kill this guy who's just helped him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not entirely...
But you could have done that with the Fire Beetles, but...
You could, it's true. Yeah. But ultimately, we're still reading fantasy adventure fiction.
Oh, it's all right, it's all right. I just think, Alnak Krebs quite a cool character.
He's a great character. Yeah. He had startlingly handsome features, with dark, humorous eyes in his gleaming black flesh. On his short curly hair, he wore a skull cap decorated with peacock feathers, and his jacket and breeches... Not breeches, not breeks, breeches, seemed to be of black velvet stitched with gold thread, over which was thrown a pale-coloured hooded cloak of the pattern usually worn by desert peoples in these parts. He rode up slowly on the loping bovine mount, which had cloven hooves and a broad head, a massive hump above its shoulders like that of certain cattle Elric had seen in scrolls depicting the southern continent.
Sounds like a camel.
At the young man's belt was a richly carved stick of some kind with a crooked handle, about half his height, and on his other hip he wore a simple, flat-hilted sword. So we know from what we've seen previously that Alnak Kreb is a dream thief.
Dream thief.
Dream thief. Because they've already commented on Elric not having one of those, despite being apparently a dream thief.
Yeah.
But nice fella. And, as luck would have it, he's headed for the Silver Oasis.
Oh, is he? That's
what a coincidence.
The other side of it is velvet in the desert. I don't know about you.
Well, you know what? Sartorial elegance finds a way, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But, velvet breeks. Yeah. Or breeches.
Breeches.
Breeches, yeah.
So I like Alnak Kreb. I think he's a really good character. And basically the first half of chapter 4 is almost pure dialogue between Elric and his new travelling companion.
Yes.
The dream thief Creb.
And is this the kind of Elric trope of being completely confused about everything?
Yeah.
Pretty much, where he just goes, yes, I'm one of the most learned men in the world. Oh, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. I am Alnec Creb, a.k.a. Basil Exposition.
Yeah, exactly.
Chapter 4. In honour of Alnec Creb, we have Origin of Darkness, Imperial Stout with coffee, vanilla, just simply wafer.
A wafer.
And cocoa nibs, 11% by volume.
The horror.
And this small bottle is £12.95.
Excellent.
Good God Almighty. Shall I pour?
Yes, please. I like Alnec Creb. I think he was all right.
I've got to say, dear listeners, these are starting to smash my head in a bit.
Yeah.
But we're on the home straight. We've broken its back. They all smell like this. I'm getting to the point where it's pointless even describing it.
Yeah.
But maybe it's my fault for buying the same type of ridiculous beer.
It's kind of like it's paraffin smell, I think. You know what I mean? Like the old school paraffin. I'm getting
raisin.
Chocolate.
That's a bit hard, considering we've swung back from sours.
Yeah, that's Emperor Ming from the planet of Ming, isn't it? If I'm honest.
Yeah,
it's galloping towards.
We're definitely on Mingo meantime.
Yeah, I think we're definitely galloping towards the Empire of Ming with that one.
Yeah, so the first half of this chapter is all dialogue, and it is a bit Basil exposition, but it's great.
I really liked it weirdly. So when I read it, when they get to the actual the Oasis, it's very much Glastonbury. I thought.
Yeah.
You've got, for me, because we've talked about young kingdoms, kind of jobs, stuff like that. In the role playing game.
Yeah.
When I was reading through it, you've got comedians, jugglers, comedians.
Yeah. Once you get to the Oasis,
yeah. So you've got the young kingdoms comedians. What do you reckon what are they talking about?
Well, I think if we ever get the chance to actually write Stormbringer 7th edition, then we need to sit down and do some proper hammering out of
the comedian
the comedian character class.
Your skills, making people laugh, obviously.
Yeah. Skills, comedy.
Yeah. Physical comedy.
Yeah.
Which nobody finds funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair enough, isn't it?
But I think ultimately it can't be any worse than some of the characters we played in your Stormbringer.
Well, that was all sailors.
Yeah, exactly. Sailors and a leprous leper, wasn't it?
80% sailor than a leper.
That's the dream of any young man's game, isn't it?
It's the dream.
Yeah. So if Moorcock was rewriting it, he'd be going, we need more lepers in there.
Yeah. That all that dialogue, and they're discussing the nature of chaos, how dream thieves tend to avoid chaos-heavy realms for fear of the consequences, which explains why they're largely unknown in the Young Kingdoms. You get lots of decent rationalisation of why they've never kind of appeared in any of the other novels that he's written over the previous 30-odd years.
Yeah.
Even though this is only chronologically the second Elric novel, and why they never appear again until...
Yeah. But they're just hiding.
They're just hiding.
They're all in Barnsley.
But I really like it. I think it's some of the most textured development of a part of the Young Kingdoms we've ever got in an Elric tale. And I think the whole of this first book of the Fortress of the Pearl, that's true of. It really feels like it feels more Quasarshart and the surrounding area, despite being kind of off the beaten track of the Young Kingdoms, as a result of this, is the most well developed part of the Young Kingdoms.
Yeah, you totally. I mean, Quasarshart is as a city, it's really brilliantly described.
Yeah.
But also the culture of all the nomads and everything is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Creb.
Yeah.
He's a really cool character.
Yeah.
Which makes it quite unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah. So the highs of Elric's soul stealing are wearing off as well, and he's starting to feel the addiction of the elixir again. But eventually conversation tends to the nature of the Fortress of the Pearl.
Of course it does.
And Elric wonders if the Silver Oasis or Casbah Mull Cariz may in fact be Tanelon, or is it in fact the Fortress of the Pearl? Which I think is a little bit of wishful thinking on his part.
That'd be a really short book, wouldn't it?
I think he's wanting to, basically fast track his way.
Yeah. He's like, is it the Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah. You're just in.
It's Scunthorpe.
Krebs says it's not Tanelon, for Tanelon is eternal. The Casbah Mull Cariz must be maintained through constant vigilance. It's the antithesis of Quasar, and that city's lords have made many attempts to destroy it. Elric felt the pangs of craving, and he resisted reaching for one of his silver flasks. Is that also called the Fortress of the Pearl? At this, Alnak Krebs suddenly laughed. Oh, my good prince, clearly you have only the haziest notion of the place and the thing you seek. Let me now say that the Fortress of the Pearl may well exist within that Casbah, and that the Casbah could also have an existence within the fortress, but they are in no way the same. Please, Master Alnak, do not confuse me further. I pretended to know something of this, first because I wished to extend my own life, and then because I needed to purchase the life of another. I would be grateful for some illumination. Lord Gorfazi thought me a dream thief, after all, which supposes that a dream thief would know of the Blood Moon, the Bronze Tent, and the location of the place of the Pearl. Aye, well, some dream thieves are better informed than others, and if a dream thief is required for this task, Prince, if, as you've told me, Quasar's sorcerer adventures cannot achieve it, then I would guess the Fortress of the Pearl is more than mere stones and mortar. It has to do with realms familiar only to a trained dream thief, but one probably more sophisticated than myself. Know you, Master Alnak, that I have already travelled to strange realms in pursuit of my various goals. I am not completely unsophisticated in such matters. These realms are denied to most. Alnak seemed reluctant to say more, but Elric pressed him. Well are these realms. He stared ahead, straining his eye to see more of the Casbah Mull Cariz, but failing, for the sun was now almost below the horizon. In the east, beyond Elware, or in another part of the multiverse altogether? Alnak Krebs was regretful. We are sworn to speak as little as we can of our knowledge, save in the most crucial and specific of circumstances. But I should inform you that these realms are at once closer and more distant than Elware. I promise you that I will not mystify you any more than I have done so already, and if I can illuminate you and help you in your quest, then I will do so. He made to laugh to lighten his own mood. Best ready yourself for company, Prince. We will have a great deal of it by nightfall, if I'm not mistaken. Thanks, Alnak Krebs. Yeah. That's really fucking excellent advice.
It's really useful, I think. Yeah. Cheers for that.
Yeah.
And then once they get there, there's someone a funeral, don't they?
Yeah. The description that you referenced earlier on of the Oasis, of the Silver Oasis, it's kind of vivid. It's lived in. It's got comedians.
Yeah,
it's got all that good shit. Yeah, you're right. They turn up and there's some kind of spooky, unusual funeral going on with an empty coffin.
Yeah.
And it turns out that it's a pre-funeral.
It is a
pre-funeral. For someone who they have very little respect for.
Who could it be?
Well, after getting into the music and getting emotionally involved in the whole scenario, they find that this is actually a pre-funeral.
It is.
And they meet Raik Nassim, who seems like a straight enough dude, and he tells Elric and Krebs that the funeral was for the man yet to die that commissioned a bunch of Quasar sorcerer adventurers, those buggers, to kidnap his daughter, who was kind of a mystical seeress type.
She is a mystical girl.
Yeah. In an attempt to find the place of the Pearl. And they killed all these sorcerer adventurers, but his daughter is now in a mystical slumber, and they're keeping her in their safe place of meditation. Well, it's only the bronze bloody tent, isn't it?
Oh, no? Is it?
Yeah.
Surely not.
Yeah. So when we draw our map of the scenario, which is basically box, one line to next box, one line to next box, the bronze tent.
But then we have the two paths. Which path are you going to go? So it's the Baradi clan, isn't it?
Yes.
So
the Baradin.
Yeah, Baradin. And Raik Nassim, it's his daughter. And we find out that the pre-funeral is for some wrong'un.
Yeah.
And it's not only Lord Go, is it?
Oh,
is it?
Of course it's Lord Go.
Oh, what a knob it is.
Wrong'un. Because he's the one who commissioned the sorcerer adventurers So we found earlier on that he'd sent numerous people in the past to try and find the place of the pearl.
Yeah.
And on this occasion, he sent them to kidnap Veradian, the daughter of Ray's. Fuck's sake.
Right. Nassim.
That fella.
Yep. It's only him.
Yeah. It's only that guy, Ray Nassim. And it all went a bit badly. And one of them cast a spell and they killed him before they could reverse it. So now Varadim is in a slumber.
A sorcerer's slumber?
A sorcerer's slumber.
Where have we heard that before?
Yeah. And of course. Yeah, Coon kept similar in a sorcerer's slumber.
What's that all about?
She's only a very young girl.
And do you reckon that's what might have spurred Elric to do it?
I think so. Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that. So he needs to go to the bronze tent where they're keeping her. There's again some very, very, very nice prose. And it says, when this was done, they have a meal. It says, when this was done, the old man called for the fleet, sturdy mounts for which the Baradim were famous. And the three of them rode away from the Silver Flower Oasis, which bustled with every kind of activity, where comedians, jugglers, and snake charmers
Exactly.
were already performing their skills.
All the classics.
And storytellers had gathered groups of children whose parents had sent them there while they were about their business. And they rode towards the ragged pillars seen faintly on the morning horizon. These mountains had been eroded by the winds of the Sighing Desert until they did indeed resemble huge columns of ragged red stone, as if they should have supported the roof of the sky itself. Elric had thought at first that he could observe the ruins of some ancient city, but Alnak Kreb had told him the truth. There are indeed many ruins in these parts, farms, small villages, whole towns which the desert sometimes reveals, all engulfed by the sand summoned by the foolish wizards of Quasisart. Many built here, even if the sands came, in the belief that they would disperse after a while. Forlorn dreams, I fear, like so many of the things built by men. Raik Nassim continued to lead them across the desert, though he used no map or compass. Apparently he knew the way by habit and instinct alone. They stopped once at a spot where a tiny growth of cacti had been all but covered by the sand, and here Raik Nassim took his long knife and sliced the plants close to their roots, peeling them swiftly and handing the juicy parts to his friends. There was once a river here, he said, and a memory of it remains far below the surface. The cactus remembers. I like that.
Yeah, and then you've got the kind of just talking about the ragged pillars. It's like it's the nearest thing we have to a temple, and there we debate with our inner selves. It's also the nearest thing we have to our religions of the West. And it is there we keep our holy girl, the symbol of all our ideals, the vessel of our race's wisdom. Yeah. Alnek was surprised. You keep her here always? Raik Nemesis shook his head, almost amused. I don't know why she sleeps in this unnatural slumber, my friend. As you know, before this, she was a normal little child. A joy to all who met her. Perhaps with your help, she will be that child again. So it's not just like they keep her in a box and go, oh, it's a holy child to be nice. It's just a kid. Yeah. Which is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Elric's definitely got that sense of connection now with Alnak Kreb.
And Raik
Nassim, and he's engaged.
He's digging it,
He's very much engaged.
Yeah. It's the breeks, I think.
Mooring, yeah, absolutely. The breeks, the breeches.
Yeah. The
didn't
flares.
even need balloons. Yeah. And he gets even more engaged when he sees that the sun had set by the time they approached the Great Tent, which resembled those Elric had seen at the Silver Flower Oasis, but was several times the size. Its walls of pure bronze. Now the moon made its appearance in the sky almost directly overhead. It seemed that the sun's rays reached for it even as they began to sink beneath the horizon, touching it with their colour, for it glowed with a richness Elric had never seen in Melniboné or the lands of the Young Kingdoms. He gasped in surprise, realising the specific nature of the prophecy. A blood moon had risen over the bronze tent. Here he would find the path to the Fortress of the Pearl.
No.
Though it meant that his own life might now be saved, the Prince of Melniboné discovered that he was only disturbed by this revelation.
Why though? Why is he disturbed?
I don't know.
Why would
because he's a mangy twat, probably.
Yeah. Luckily, chapter 5.
Dream Thief Pledge. Oh God.
The pledge.
We're slacking off here. Oh, sweet Jeebus and all the baby angels. Yeah. Fortunately, the one we've got lined up for chapter 5 or beer match for chapter 5. Although I got 2 bottles, one each. I think we should just share this one bottle.
Yeah. And then drink something nice. Because I think we'll have earned it. Yeah. Right, I'm going to go for
a Wazza.
A John Toshak.
Okay, so our final beer match for Chapter 5 is DCL XVI. I'm sure that means something in Roman numerals, but I think
Of course it is.
Two drunks figure it out. Barrel-aged smoked Russian Imperial Stout, 12%, $8.95 for a 330ml bottle. $8.95. All right. So before we get into what is actually quite a sad chapter, actually.
It is a very sad chapter.
Which I got quite emotional about.
At
one point.
With the tears?
Not quite, but I did get Elric gets quite emotional about something.
He does, yeah. He does, bless him.
And the fate of Alnak Kreb. Because I'm a long-term Moorcock fan and I've always bought into the Eternal Champion thing and the Companion thing.
Of course you have.
That little line before he passes, I thought was quite beautiful. But anyway, we need to earn that emotion.
We do, yeah.
By drinking this terror.
It smells very much...
Doesn't smell much.
Dog food.
Old ashtrays.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Leather jackets.
Yeah, it smells like an old John Player special ashtray.
Or a leather jacket.
A leather jacket.
A leather jacket that's been worn in the 70s while somebody's smoking JPS.
Yeah. Did you ever smoke JPS?
No, but our drummer, Dean, smoked JPS.
Yeah.
He was the only person I've ever seen.
I had one brief conversation with JPS where I thought, the packet's cool, therefore...
Do you have a Capri?
Cool. I didn't have a Capri, although I did occasionally borrow my mate Mike Palmer's Capri.
While smoking JPS.
So it was round about the same time that I used to borrow his Capri. And it was a horrendous car to drive. Because if you tried to set off too quickly from lights and you were turning right or left, you could do a 360.
Really?
In the middle of traffic.
Was it that
really,
bad?
really easily. Yeah. But... I smoked John Player Special for about a week, and I had one night, and I used to knock about with a kid called James, who I worked with at the hospital, and we used to go in the Bull on Beverly Road and get shit first. And I had one night where we drank far too much in the Bull, and I'd smoked far too many JPS, and I had curry sauce and chips, and I threw it all up down his toilet, and I could never smell a JPS again without feeling sick.
So it was I think as a kid, if you saw the JPS kind of design, you'd be like, oh, it's black, it's gold. Yeah. That's fucking great. It's like,
and they had it on a Formula One car.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, if you got a Capri, which is, but because one of the guys I went to school with, he had his mum had a black Capri with gold stripes on it. That's possibly the greatest car ever at the time. Yeah. And she didn't smoke. She probably did. In my head, she did. JPS out the window. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. That fascination with the JPS livery remains, because when Stu and Sarah and Phil and I were in Moorcock last year, there's a fantastic little craft... Sorry, you just tried it and whizzed, so I've got to go for it. Then I'll tell you my JPS. And I go, okay, that's fucking foul.
Yeah.
Lord Foul. Yeah, Lord Foul's bear. Just less rapey.
Yeah.
So we went to this place, and it's absolutely fantastic place, run by a guy in his 60s who was ex-RAF, and it's just a little micro pub. And he has all kinds of tat in there that's for sale. So we were in there every day the entire time we were in there, and we kept looking. Stu was looking at an ashtray, and I was looking at a whiskey water jug. Yeah. Black with a JPS gold logo on it. And the last day we were there, Stu surprised me and said I bought these. So I have a JPS water jug for my whiskey, and Stu has a JPS ashtray.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Yeah. But anyway... That beer is absolutely terrible.
How did we get into JPS? I forgot.
I don't know.
Yeah, excellent. Amazing.
Let's move on, shall we?
Yes, let's.
So the girl Radian is in a slumber, eyes wide open. And Elric gets quite emotional about this, reflects on Melanie Bonnet's history of conflict with quasar sharks.
Probably reminds me of Cimmeril.
Definitely reminds him of Cimmeril. And her eyes blue as the wonderful Vilmerian sea. That's probably the most development Vilmer's ever had. Yeah. The fact that the sea's nice and blue.
It's like the blue stone of Galveston, isn't it? She has eyes as blue as the blue stone of Galveston.
Which I've been assured is very blue indeed.
Have you seen it?
No. But I've been assured very blue indeed.
Lord Percy should be in most Moorcock.
Yeah, he should really.
Yeah, as the sidekick.
Yeah, he should be in Moorcock as should the secret of pure green.
Yeah, totally.
Can it be true that I hold in my hand the secret pure green?
Yeah, and they've got that, and then Elric goes, what was the torturer called?
The one Ploppy, son of Ploppy, was it?
no, I mean, in the Elric book.
Oh, Dr. Jest.
Yeah. Percy can see Dr. Jest.
Yeah. To be fair, I think Dr. Jest just had his name changed by deed poll.
Yeah.
I think he was really Ploppy, son of Ploppy.
Yeah.
But, yeah. My people believe that Quasar destroyed herself forever, said Elric. Was that they had, or that Melniboné had shown less arrogance and completed what their wizard began? He rarely betrayed such ferocious emotions towards those his race had defeated, but now he knew only loathing for Lord Gur, whose men, he was sure, had done this terrible thing. He recognised the nature of sorcery, for it was not unlike that he had learned himself, though his cousin, Yerkun, had shown more interest in those specific arts and cared to practice them, where Elric did not. So yeah, he's making that connection as well between Lord Gur and Yerkun, his hated cousin, even though he doesn't really hate Yerkun at this point.
It's a bit ambivalent, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, you tried to, you booted me into the sea.
Yeah.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
You know.
I was quite annoyed about that, but you know,
yeah, I'll let it go. Yeah.
You forced us into a shadow realm where I had to climb through a giant vulva to battle you with a rune sword.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of all right with that. I won?
Yeah.
So I'll put you on the
And
throne.
then, you know, I could have actually had you executed, but I thought I'll just go with gap year.
Yeah.
You seem to be a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
You be in charge.
Yeah. I'm sure you've learned your lessons.
Yeah. Your cousin, who you seem to be lusting after, my missus, should be all right with that.
Yeah. Bit of an idiot.
Yeah, he's a knobhead, isn't he?
Bit of an idiot, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't think it through.
He is smart enough to make the connection that the path to the Pearl, the great MacGuffin, is wrapped up in the dream that Varadian is trapped in, because after all, the blood moon appeared above the bronze tent and the orange Mazda pointed into the magenta ashtray.
I'm not convinced.
Huh?
I'm not convinced why it's connected, really.
Yeah.
Seems a bit tenuous.
It is a little bit tenuous.
Yeah.
But Lord Gore said, all this shit will happen, and all this shit has happened.
Yeah, I'll go with it, obviously. Yeah. I'm not going to argue, but, you know.
Raik Nassim indicates that he sent for a dream thief. And as we know, Kreb has been a little bit puzzled because he felt he was there for different reasons, but he kind of rises to the occasion. Yeah,
Krebs a bit of a shit dream thief, isn't he?
He did acknowledge himself earlier on that it maybe would require a dream thief with more skills than him.
Yeah.
But Raik Nassim is kind of putting quite a bit of pressure on him. So I sent for a dream thief, here you are.
But it's also his son, isn't he? He talks to him as his son.
Yeah, and that's like a customary thing.
Yeah, and he talks about Elric as being his son. Yeah. He kind of embraces them both, which is cool.
Yeah. But despite Krebs' lack of confidence that he has the level of skill required,
he goes in, doesn't he?
He steps up. And Elric is sufficiently bought into this entire thing that Elric says that he pledges to guard Varadian and the Dream Thief whilst he does it.
Yeah.
Doesn't really go that well for him.
No,
sadly.
He's let himself down, hasn't
he? Yeah. So he withers up to a terrible husk.
He does.
His eyes turn black and his blue eyes are transferred to the girl.
Yeah.
And he's calling out and going, oh no, she is killing me, etc. And then eventually, I think he's dying. But suddenly, his flesh is restored. He wakes up. For a split second, they have a sense of relief. But then he vomits his own guts up.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Isn't it?
Yeah, which isn't very pleasant. So it didn't really go well for him. And in his final realisation of his fate, he relates to Elric as an incarnation of the Eternal Champion. And it's actually really, really beautifully handled. And he says something along the lines of, alas, I am not fated, Sir Champion, to be your companion on this occasion.
Yeah.
And he dies. In many ways, it's Moorcock kind of eating his own tail. Moorcock is like the worm Ouroboros in Orthophore, that he constantly revolves around and eats his own tail, but it really, really works if you're a fan of the material.
Yeah, you're too right. I think And he would have been a really good kind of companion. If you think about like Elric's companions, Rose is obviously really cool in the next book.
Yeah.
But then, who do we get?
Well, so I'm in the midst of my emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And after he's passed, a woman enters the bronze tent and announces herself.
Yeah.
Well, it was a young woman, but she was not of the Baradine. She entered the tent slowly, and there were tears in her eyes as she stared down at Alnacreb's ruined body. I am too late then. Her musical voice was full of the most intense sorrow. She reached her hand to her face. You should not have attempted such a task. They told me at the Silverflower Oasis that you would come here. Why could you have not waited a little longer, just a day more? It was with great effort that she controlled her grief, and Elric felt a sudden obscure kinship with her. She took another step towards the body. She was an inch or so shorter than Elric, with a heart-shaped face framed by thick brown hair. Slender and well-muscled, she wore a padded jerkin, slashed to show its red silk lining. She had soft velvet breeches, embroidered felt riding boots, and over this an almost transparent cotton dustcoat pushed back from her shoulders. At her belt was a sword, while cradled above her left shoulder was a hooked staff of gold and ebony, a more elaborate version of the one which lay on the carpet behind Alnac's corpse. I taught him all he knew of this craft, she said, but it was not enough for this. How could he ever have thought that it would be? He could never have achieved such a goal. He had not the character for it. She turned away, brushing her face. When she looked back, her tears had gone, and she stared directly back into Elric's eyes. I am Una, she said. She bowed briefly to Raik Nassim. I am the dream thief you sent for. What a twist!
Oh my god, it's only Una. God.
End of book 1.
Yeah.
And of course, we should probably point out that as Moorcock continues to eat his own tail, Una person.
And also in later books, the mother of.
Yeah, of course. Many books down the line, we have the Dream Thief's daughter.
Yes, we do.
The Moonbeam Roads trilogy. That's end of book 1.
It is.
What are our takeaways from book 1 of The Fortress of the Pearl?
I liked it a lot. I didn't like the let's lob a random monster in.
Yeah.
No need for it. The prose is enough to carry it through.
Yeah.
I think the Dream Thief stuff adds a bit of mythology to the Young Kingdoms stuff.
Yeah, I think the introduction of the Dream Thief concept is really elegant, and using Kreb as like a doomed companion is quite impactful and ties it into that kind of broader.
I just think that's a bit sad because I think he was he would have been a good companion.
He would,
and especially when you read on, he would have been a better one than some of the other people in there. I think, well, obviously Moorcock when he was writing it was like, yeah, it's a shit Dream Thief. Here's Una, who's gonna rock it.
My main takeaways are that, despite our misgivings about how he's characterised, I like Lord Go, he's a great villain, he's a massive twat.
Yeah.
Moorcock's style in this is less headlong and energetic, but it's
better, I think.
Rich and absorbing. Okay, notwithstanding your reservations about, the monster stuff in chapter 3, I quite like that. Ties it into, Elric's stories basically being, it's still at its heart, pulp adventure.
Yeah, but I think it's more. It's a more modern take on fantasy.
It is. But I still appreciate the fact that there's nothing like a good ruckus in my fantasy. I do dig a bit of ruckus.
Yeah, I get that. I just think there's so much ruckus. You get just all of the.
It's only one chapter out of 5.
Yeah, just the whole cult thing was a bit. Do we need it?
Oh, I liked it. I thought it was funny. It was quite Mervyn Peake, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, probably Quasata was a lot Mervyn Peake-esque, wasn't it? With
I just really love the concept of these different sects who are all inbred, who are all related to each other, so therefore can't actually fight each other. So all they can really do is manoeuvre.
Yeah.
And when they're actually presented with a checkmate, which is someone just being really violent, their entire approach falls to pieces.
Yeah, and you've also got the fact that they're just ultimately useless because the commanding nothing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the purpose of nothing where you've just got, I'm in charge of all of this.
Yeah.
What, the curtains? Exactly. You know what I mean? It's
the curtains?
Well, so it was stupid to build it on a swamp. It's sunk.
Yeah.
Built it again. Yeah, that kind of stuff, isn't it?
Yes.
Quasi that is just that.
Well, you know what? I think the main takeaway, though, is I was not expecting to enjoy this because of my memories of it. But actually, I really enjoyed it. And I took a lot away from it.
Gone into book 2.
Yeah.
I'm saying nothing, but
okay.
I'm wearing my slightly cynical hat on, if you will. You know, your
the cynical hat of Pat Ferry.
Yeah, the Stetson of Pat Ferry. the disappointing fez of Pat Ferry. That kind of thing. Yeah,
well, I'm wearing the optimistic loon riches
of
Jeff.
Quasazat. No, I to be honest, it's what I remember it, because I remember for me, the beginning was ace, the end was ace, the middle was a bit. But
well, it looks like we're just going to have to earn that ending, doesn't it, by going through the pain of book 2. But you know what, we might find something wonderful.
We could
embedded in there.
I hope so. So far.
Is this the one that has the off moo in it?
Not that I know so far.
Right.
That might be Revenge of the Rose. I can't remember.
Oh, they'll come back.
It's the equivalent of our multiverse games where somebody goes through a gate and goes, hooray, we're in the...
Yeah, which, ironically, when I took over your game and you all went through a cave and went, hooray, I said, oh, look, it's the off moo. And this is why I was thinking, is this the one with the off moo in? Is that where I got that nonsense from?
No, I don't think it was. What was the one with Mrs. House in it?
I think Mrs. House is in the Moonbeam Road.
Yeah, it probably is, yeah. So I think in my head, it might have been Revenge of the Rose. Revenge of the Rose had the,
Yeah.
We'll go through it.
I think the Imperial barrel-aged smoked Russian stout at 12% might have defeated us.
Yeah, it might have kicked our teeth in.
Yeah, so at this point, the best thing to do is say, thank you, Loz, for joining me and Derry and Tom's to do terrible beer matching with chapters 1 to 5.
I think it'd be rude not to.
The Fortress of the Pearl, and we will reconvene at a future point to look at book 2, wearing our best breeches.
Yeah. Velvet breeches.
Velvet breeches.
Or breeks.
Or breeks. Well, we can decide at the time.
Yeah. Either way, they're going to be velvet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks as ever to Loz for coming back for more and joining me in Derry and Tom's. We'll get back to the Fortress of the Pearl soon and see if our memories of all the dream thieving shenanigans remain sound, or if we severely misjudged this book in our salad days. Since the last show, the extremely smart Saga Press edition of the second volume of the Elric saga, Stormbringer, has finally landed, and, as with Volume 1, it's a truly gorgeous book, so thanks again to Joe and co over at Saga Press for doing such a fantastic job. As this has been a pretty lengthy show, I'm going to crack on now and thank our patrons. It continues to humble me that we are worthy of your support. So first up, our Chaos Engineers. Andrew Cicluna, Andrew Van Ness, Anthony Porter, Ben Fletcher, Dave Washman, Fred Quiche, Jim Kirkland, John Lays, Jules Lawrence, Mal Pertwee, Matt Saltz, Menyon, Nelbert, Paul McRandall, Simon Perrins, Tony Milazzo, and, new in the bunks on the Donblass, Dave Griffiths. Thanks for the support, Dave. Frankly, I'm amazed and honoured that my terrible nonsense on Thursday nights didn't put you off listening to this show. But thanks for all the great games, and I hope you, and indeed Clarky, spot a couple of inspirations as the journal unfolds. And thanks to our Jugaderos, Alexander Harris, Craig Ledley, Dave Dalrymple, Ian Stead, Laws, Taylor, Matthew Broom, Steve Round, Toby White, and Tom Murphy. And to our patron demons, Clarky the Cruel, Gareth Wilson, Graham Holden, Imria, Joe Monty, Paul Hillary, Liam Jones, Miles Reed-Labato, thanks Miles, Mortmain, Neil Burton, Randall Gatlin, Robert McMillan, Janie Stimmer, brand new patron demon Andy Darby, author of Me and the Monkey, more to come on that in a future show, and of course the OG patron, Norman. Norman, we all wish you the very best with your treatment. We love you, and we hope to get that in-person storm bring a conclusion in this year when we can toast your progress. And finally, to those patrons without a tier, Sebastian Weetabix, Tim Cardos, Anthony Piconti, and Dave Dempster. Dave, may the hand of Rill, and especially the eye of Quim, aid your recovery. Thanks again, everybody, for all of your support. So that just about concludes my waffle for this show. Stay tuned after the transition for Chapter 11 of the journal, and don't forget that you can yak with us on Twitter on the handle @BreakfastRuins. You can email us at breakfastruins@outlook.com. The website is breakfastintheruins.com. We have our Patreon page too, and that has some extras. But until next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon on the Moonbeam Roads. The Journal of Gerard Arthur Connelly, Chapter 11. Indomitable. Waking only fleetingly to occasionally eat more of the musty pastries that Brainer appeared to restock whenever I exhausted them, and to drink tangy water from a flask, I slept for 3 or 4 days while my ankle recuperated. I dreamed constantly, vividly, the emotions and racket feelings associated with the baffling scenarios persisting in my waking mind. They were recurring and thematic. No matter my height, or shape, or age, or the world in which I dwelled, always the sensation of loss, and I often dreamed of her. Old, unconcluded love is like an ache. It oppressed me for many years. Whenever I trod the hallway to the Coltishall Social and saw her picture amongst the gallery of the lost, I would limit myself, quite deliberately, to only a glance. But even that merest of reminders of her features, which would not fade from my memory as such but just lose definition, made a pressure build behind my eyes and forehead that would persist until at least the 3rd or 4th Benedictine. That maudlin sense of disappointment and deprivation felt like those times when our occasional meets failed for one reason or another, and I would stand on wet cobbles outside a restaurant and almost cry with frustration. Our final tryst before she disembarked for the ongoing Maghreb policing action was at the Shaftesbury Hotel in Moorcock. We dined early before drinking with abandon at the Tivoli bar. A local skiffle group, fronted by a suave West Indian called Maurice, pumped crackling energy into the gaps between the cumuli of hanging smoke and ensured that the frisson of violence that always accompanied the patrons remained an undercurrent, at least until the proprietor's half-hearted call for last orders later in the night. We danced with vigour. I was elated. Even through a thick issue nylons, her supple calves inflamed my passions and empowered me in the face of hungry, covetous, dog-like stares emanating from a group of Haitian garrison squaddies. As we whirled through the hanging smoke of 100 cheap imported Petras, we laughed breathlessly. That was the last time I'd danced. The following morning, I walked down the promenade towards the towering mooring mast at Haitian. We spoke little. Her vessel, the Hood-class air cruiser Indomitable, hung imperiously over the coastline ahead, and supply trucks rumbled by carrying supplies, munitions, and chattering crew, snatches of songs and laughter leaving fading trails of optimism and camaraderie as the only fleeting evidence of their passage. Velocipedes rattled by, riders ringing their bells furiously to part the pedestrians along the prom. I tried to tell her something, but I didn't have the words. She sensed it and gently gripped my arm. Don't walk me to the gates. It will feel final somehow. I'll see you for a Negroni in May. She smiled slightly, turned, and walked briskly away, joining the now ubiquitous flood of uniforms and workers headed to the Haitian moorings. I'd never taken to Negronis, having harboured a strong dislike for bitter Italian aperitifs for much longer than I'd known her, and this had rankled in a way that feels petty, even now, but I couldn't shake the black dog of dismay. With 36 hours of leave remaining before I took the trains back to Norwich, I lost myself in the familiar Moorcock fug of cheap spirits, high-tar cigarettes, and the obscure treasures of the Warren-like old pier bookshop. By the time I boarded my first train, the old melancholia had returned with elan, and not even a breakfast mug of tonic wine in the dining car could mark it. On that day, TMAS Indomitable and her escorts were ambushed and downed, lost with all hands by a flotilla under the command of the Canadian airship Collective Grief Nebula. The independent states' rather ostentatious naming conventions for their warcraft had been established by the designer Banks, the traitorous Scottish aeronautical engineer. I learned of the disaster from the evening edition of the Doncaster Bugle whilst laying over during a blackout later the same day. I spent the night on a waiting room bench, wrapped in my gabardine mac. A kindly station master had handed out mitten warmers, small tin cases with an ember from his firing case within. It did little to keep out the late February chill, but it was a comfort of sorts as I numbly tried to cry. Tears didn't come, but fitful sleep did. On that night, I dreamed that I was an aging stand-up comic with a pathetically dated shtick, desperately trying to survive a surprisingly violent variety club scene. I fled to the sun only for the world to end. Weird, but not the weirdest I'd had. Reflecting in subsequent years on my myriad failures, I have long since accepted that I was not entirely the wrong match for her, but rather, she was waiting for something better. It was those feelings, and the associated almost but not quite tears that often accompanied them, that weighed upon me when I woke on the fourth day. Enough was enough, and my muscles were stiff with inactivity. I shook myself awake and forced the unwelcome emotions back into the tight black ball of bile around my diaphragm where they belonged, and reached for my boots. Brainer entered the small chamber. "You're awake? Good. We have tarried here overlong." She took a deep swig from an ornate flask I'd hitherto not seen, and sat with a huff on the stool by the brazier before pulling out a small pipe and packing it from an intricately decorated leather pouch. Lighting it deftly with what I could only perceive to be the rubbing together of two heavily calloused fingertips, she drew deeply on it before leaning back with a sigh, exhaling a steady stream of pungently scented smoke. Seeing my interest, or surprise, as outside of Issa Khan Nuristan's compound during a brief mooring in the Cush in '73, I'd honestly never seen a woman smoke a pipe at close quarters. She offered me the pouch. I declined, preferring to ignite my last emergency fag. She shrugged, a look on her face like an assumption had been disappointingly confirmed. Once I'd removed it from its .55-inch boy's cartridge case and sparked up, the stench of the filterless senior service cigarette reached her, prompting a wrinkled nose and an expression of abject disgust. I fiddled with the brass cylinder, attempting to look interested in its contents, to conceal an involuntary blush of shame. The boy's round was used to penetrate armoured cupolas at range, but once empty of grains, the long voluminous cartridge was perfect for storing string, sewing needles, and various other bits and bobs safely, and, more importantly, keeping backup tabs intact in hostile conditions. I could only cough ostentatiously and try to suppress the sensation that my status as a discerning gentleman of taste meant nothing here. I also had to acknowledge to myself that my smoke smelled foul and rather sour in contrast with the sweet, heady leaf that Brainer was evidently accustomed to. Knowing that it was my last, I winced inwardly before bravely stubbing the cigarette out and throwing the remains into the fire. My emergency fag case, now empty save for a scrap of coffee-stained paper noting the combination number for my locker back aboard the Victoria Imperatrix, went back in my hip pocket. She stood and gathered her belongings, swinging them onto her back as she took a last drag, and then tapped the embers of her bowl into the dying brazier. She turned and exited, leaving me to grab my coat and limp after her. Surprisingly, my leg held up rather well, considering. "This place," I said, as I caught her up and then struggled to pass a question. "What is it? Is there any civilization or power here? It can't just be swamp and beasties and umska." She halted by the wharf. The defeated abomination from the swamp was suspended on the crane hook. Sections of its flesh and blubber had been sliced off for rendering. I suppressed a reflux of bile. "You do not know of him?" she replied, a little puzzled perhaps. "Who?" "The baker on the rocks. He was once a denizen of this place, this realm, I think. But it exists only by his will now." The baker on the rocks. Curiouser and curiouser, exclaimed a child in the back of my mind. The days I'd spent in the old velocipede warehouse had reinforced my sense that this place was all darkness and fog, but now I realised that my eyes were creased and squinting in the daylight. Granted, it wasn't exactly a summer's day, but I could see for several hundred yards into a haze above the swampland that had previously encompassed this rail yard and warehouse. Some roofs still poked above the morass and the reeds here and there. Further away, I spotted the source of the high, soft lights I'd seen on my arrival before my second encounter with the thing. Constructions of wood and rope stood high above the swamp. As Brenna sliced more flesh from the crane-hung corpse and wrapped it in greasy brown paper from her pack, I watched an intriguing process. People, too distant to make out in more detail, climbed poles around 50 further feet above the height of the rickety platforms and floated small paper balloons heated from within for lift, like old prayer kites in eastern monasteries. They would be gently obscured as they rose into a low layer of cloud or denser mist, before plummeting in flames a few seconds later. This seemed a strange and baffling ritual until, after 7 or 8 attempts, one fell with something, a creature entangled in the fine wire frame of the balloon kite, to the obvious delight of the whooping people below, who descended upon it and beat it with paddles before throwing it in a sack. They were fishing then, just upwards. Another reminder, if one was needed, that I was no longer in Kansas. Brenna interrupted my musing. "Come along, if you're coming." With that, she strode boldly into the reeds, staying handily aloft thanks to the mud-obscured sleepers of the old railway line. Wondering precisely where we may be going, but only to myself, I pulled and straightened my jacket, now a bit tattered sadly, and hobbled after that extraordinary figure.